What compels a man to abandon wealth, luxury, his wife, and newborn child to pursue the answer to life's suffering? Some would say it is something intense, something existential, something so deeply spiritual that it delegates the conventionalities of family secondary to this larger purpose. Such was the case for Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, that such people exist, and in their wake a new collective consciousness is revealed. And it is these individuals that fill pages of history, poetry, and songs. Hello, I am Daisy, your hostess. Welcome. In this video, I'm going to share the life of Buddha and his main teachings as compiled by Dan Shoba Tulhar. Before we get into the life story of Buddha, I'd like to somewhat set the stage so as to get better understanding of this persona. Siddhartha Gautama, circa 6th through 4th century BC, was a spiritual teacher who was said to be born into royalty in Lumbini, which is modern Nepal. He was the founder of Buddhism. Some scholars say that his original name was Suddhodana, then one of the great and wealthy landowners of the Shakya race, whom later legends transformed into the great king Suddhodana, as is retailed in some stories and poetry. Historians write that the Shakyas were an ancient Indo-Aryan tribe circa 7th through 5th centuries BC, which were organized as a republic on the border of modern Nepal and India. They were said to most likely be a Kshatriya warrior clan and of non-Vedic origin, meaning they did not adhere to the sacred scripture of Hinduism. After abandoning a life of luxury to witness suffering, Siddhartha Gautama became an ascetic before developing the principles and philosophy found in the Middle Way. He attained enlightenment at age 35, becoming the Buddha, meaning the awakened one. If you ask, is Siddhartha considered a real historical figure? Scholars will say that he was real and not a mythological creation. He was a spiritual teacher born in modern-day Nepal, whose teachings founded Buddhism, although details of his life are often intertwined with later legends and accounts. Historical evidence for Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, includes 3rd century BC Ashokan inscriptions, early stupas containing relics, archaeological ruins at Lumbini, his birthplace, and the consistent narrative of the Pali Canon. Scholars generally agree he was a 5th century BC teacher whose life formed the basis of Buddhism. I've learned that in the wake of a vacuum, something will come to fill. If you want to test this theory, simply leave a bowl or empty candy dish out on a table or countertop, and before the week is out, there will be things inside. Keys, receipts, paper clips, you name it. Aristotle called this concept horror vacui, which reflects the principle that nature abhors a vacuum. It suggests that empty spaces, physical, metaphorical, or structural, rarely stay empty, as surrounding matter, energy, or circumstances immediately rush in to fill the void. And I mention this because one might ask, what gave rise to Buddhism? And it was that in Buddha's time, there was a vacuum. India had entirely lost all true knowledge of God, and to such extent that in the whole of the literature of early Buddhism, it is said one cannot find any clear trace of the consciousness of the very possibility of God's existence. The fall of Babylon around 538 BC, when the Persian Empire under Cyrus arose on the ruins of the Assyrio-Babylonian, was one of the great turning points in history, for it marked the passing away of the temporal power of the Semites and the ascension of the Aryan or the Japhetic family of nations, which took place in the lifetime of Gautama Buddha. Scholars say that gradually in India arose a general feeling of dissatisfaction with the religious doctrines of the Brahmanical faith, of unbelief in the deities then worshipped by the Indian Aryans. This gave rise to desire to obtain by thought and investigation, some more satisfactory answer to the great problem of human existence and of human suffering that was afforded by the hymns of the Rig Veda. These are the earliest ethnic scripture of the Aryan family, hymns written in an ancient dialect known as Vedic Sanskrit. While no longer spoken as a mother tongue, it still is actively used in liturgy, chants, and studied by scholars. Now, going back to har vakui, or the vacuum I spoke of, men were longing for some positive system of teaching. They were waiting for a philosophy which might solve some of the problems of human life and might point out a way to escape from sorrow and suffering. And Buddhism came to fill that void. The fact of the existence of a world of suffering, misery, and hopelessness was very real to Buddha. He had previously learned by experience the misery of existence and existence apart from God. He believed that he had learned the cause of this misery and suffering, the possibility of its cessation, and the way to attain to that end. The explanation of these points constitute almost the whole of his teaching, which is important to share because today's Buddhism has morphed, as many things in life tend to do, and if it still exists in some form today, it simply is the test of time, revealing a veritable truth that exists within its tenets that pulls at the string of man, as we see in Buddhism, which today it has morphed into a diverse global faith with varied rituals, schools, and cultural adaptations, as we see in Zen or Tibetan Buddhism. These are a divergence from the original Siddhartha Buddhism, which was non-theistic and used a philosophical approach focused on personal enlightenment, often a direct challenge to the caste system, and the rituals of 6th century BC Brahmanism, focusing on direct personal experience rather than blind faith. While also it holds a historical significance as it was a catalyst in dismantling strict social hierarchies emerging in a time of strict caste system, as I mentioned, Buddhism offered a path to enlightenment accessible to all, regardless of social rank or birth. It also fostered cross-cultural trade as it spread from India throughout Asia, including Sri Lanka, China, Korea, and Japan via the Silk Road and trade networks. And similar to a Constantine diet for Christianity, Buddhism's political influence was evident when Emperor Ashoka the Great, 3rd century BC, adopted Buddhism as a state religion in India, aiding its expansion by creating monasteries and sending missionaries out. When we talk about veritable truths, here is a recognized Buddhist teaching focusing on mindset which seems to resonate with many, even today, whether Buddhist or not. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. As I said to turn the page, I want to thank you for visiting with me. Please leave a comment and let me know you were here. The Life of Buddha, materials adapted from various sources, a narrative put together by Dan Shoba Tuladar. Life of the Buddha, Suddhodana and Maha Maya. Long ago, there was a king called Suddhodana. He married a beautiful Kalian princess named Mahamaya. The couple ruled over the Sakyas, a warrior tribe living next to Kolaya tribe in the north of India. The capital of Sakya country was Kapilavastu. Since King Suddhodana was a very good king and Queen Mahamaya was equally good, everyone in the kingdom loved them. But they did not have children, and they were longing for a son for a long time. One full moon night in the palace, the queen had a dream. She felt herself being carried away by 4 devas, angels, to Lake Anotata in the Himalayas. After bathing her in the lake, the devas clothed her in heavenly clothes. Soon after, a white elephant holding a white lotus flower in its trunk appeared and went round her 3 times. Finally, the elephant disappeared. She woke up. She found it was all a dream. The next day, early in the morning, the queen told the king about the dream. The king was puzzled, and so he sent for some wise men and asked them the meaning of the dream. The wise men said, "Your Majesty, you are very lucky. The Devas have chosen our queen as the mother of the purest one, and the child will become a very great being." The king and queen were very happy when they heard this. They were so pleased that they invited many of the noblemen in the country to the palace to a feast and to tell them the good news. Even the needy were not forgotten. Food and clothes were given to the poor people. The birth in Lumbini. About 10 months after the dream, the queen was expecting her child, and so she went to the king and said, "My dear, I have to go back to my parents. My baby is about due now." Since it was the custom for a wife to have her baby in her father's house, the king agreed, saying, "Very well, I will make the necessary arrangements for you to go." The king then sent soldiers ahead to clear the road, and some were retained to guard the queen as she was carried in a decorated palanquin. The queen left Kapilavastu in a long procession of soldiers and retainers for the capital of her father's kingdom. On the way to the Kolia country, they passed a garden called Lumbini Park at the foot of the Himalaya mountains. At that time, the park was full of sweet, scented flowers growing on the sala trees, and thousands of birds, bees, and other insects had flocked to the trees. The beautiful park with its trees and scented flowers and busy birds and bees attracted the queen. Since the park was a good resting place, the queen ordered the bearers to stop there for a while. However, as she rested underneath one of the salad trees, her baby boy was born. It was an auspicious day. The birth took place on a Vesak full moon day in the year 623 BC. According to the legends about this birth, the baby began to walk 7 steps forward, and at each step a lotus flower appeared on the ground where his foot should have been. Another legend tells us that the baby said, "I am the chief in the world. There is no equal to me. I am supreme. This is my last birth, no rebirth for me." After the birth of her baby son, Queen Mahamaya immediately returned to Kapilavastu. When the king learnt of this, he was very happy, and there was rejoicing all over the country. His education. On the 7th day, Prince Siddhartha's mother died. The king had another queen called Prajapati Gautami. She was the younger sister of Queen Mahamaya. She had given birth to a son on the same day that Mahamaya died. Then Prajapati Gautami gave her own son to a nurse and brought up Prince Siddhartha as her own son. She loved him very much. Siddhartha could not remember his own mother. When Prince Siddhartha was only a few years old, King Suddhodana sent him to school. There were many children in his class. All of them were from noble families. His teacher was called Sarvamitra. He learned languages, reading, writing, mathematics, history, geography, science, and many games like boxing, archery, and wrestling. He learned all these subjects faster than any other pupil in his class. He was the cleverest in the class, the best in games, and the best in everything. He gained distinction in every subject. He was the wisest and the only one who asked many questions from his teachers and elders. He was the strongest, the tallest, and the most handsome boy in the class. He was never lazy, never misbehaved, and never disobedient to the teachers. He loved everybody, and everybody loved him. He was a friend of all, kind, even to animals, and never harmed them. Prince Siddhartha's kindness. Prince Siddhartha was very kind to people, animals, and other living things. As a very brave horseman, he won many prizes in the country. Although he did not have to suffer any hardships and difficulties, as he had everything, he always thought of the poor people and living things who were working hard to make him happy. He felt sorry for them and wanted to make them happy too, as he always was. One day, he was walking in the woods with his cousin Devadatta, who had his bow and arrow with him. Suddenly, Devadatta saw a swan flying and shot at it. His arrow brought the swan down. Both of the boys ran to get the swan. Siddhartha could run faster, and he reached the bird first and found to his surprise that the swan was still alive. So he gently pulled out the arrow from the wing. He then got a little juice from cool leaves, put it on the wound of the bird to stop the bleeding, and with his soft hand stroked the swan, which was very frightened. When Devadatta came to claim the swan, naturally Siddhartha refused to give it to him. Devadatta was very angry to see his cousin keeping the swan away from him. "Give me my bird, I shot it down," said Devadatta. "No, I'm not going to give it to you. If you had killed it, it would have been yours. But now, since it is only wounded and alive, it belongs to me, because I saved its life," said Siddhartha. Devadatta still did not agree. Then Siddhartha suggested, "Let us go to the court of wise men and ask them who really owns the swan." Devadatta agreed, and then both of them went to the court of wise men to tell them about their quarrel. The wise men said, "A life certainly must belong to him who tries to save it. A life cannot belong to one who is only trying to destroy it. The wounded swan, by right, belongs to Siddhartha." Prince Siddhartha's wedding. Prince Siddhartha finished his studies very soon. He had the best teachers to learn from, the best friends to play with, the best house to live in, the best clothes to wear, and the best food to eat. His father had built him 3 palaces, one for each season, one for winter, one for summer, and one for the rainy season. He had also built for him extensive parks and hunting grounds with ponds with water lilies, swans, and beautiful fish in them. Asita and Kodana, who came to the palace, had warned the king, "When your son sees a sick man, an old man, a dead body, or a monk, he will want to leave your palace and become a monk himself." The king was worried that his son would see them and leave the palace. Therefore, he gave him many young servants and did not allow any sick man or old man to go into the palace. The king did not even let anybody talk about sickness, old age, death, and monks. But Prince Siddhartha was very thoughtful and was asking people many questions. He really wanted to know the meaning of life. One day, the king asked some wise people, "What shall I do to make my son happy? He seems to be thinking always." They said, "Now your son is 16 years old. Shall we get a beautiful girl for him to marry?" The king agreed and sent for all the beautiful girls in the country to come to the place. When all of them came, the king asked the prince to choose one to be his wife. Among them there was a most charming and kind girl by the name of Yasodhara. One prince, Siddhartha, gave her a present more valuable than what he had given to the other maidens. The king saw that the prince had chosen his love. The king happily accepted Yasodhara and allowed his son to marry her. An old beggar. After what he had done for the prince, the king was satisfied that his son would follow in his footsteps and become a king later. He ordered a high wall to be built around the palace, including the park. But the prince was not happy in this palace, living like a prisoner. One day he told his father, "Father, I must go out of the palace gate and see how other people live." "Very well, my son," said the king. "You shall go outside the palace wall to see how people live in my city. But first, I must prepare things so that all would be good and proper for my noble son's visit." When the people had decorated the city, the king said, "Now you can go, my dear son, and see the city as you please." As the young prince was going through the streets, all of a sudden, From a small old hut beside the road, out came an old man with long silver gray hair, wearing very old torn dirty rags. The skin of his face was all dried up and wrinkled. His sunken eyes were dim and he was almost blind. There were no teeth in his mouth. He stood up trembling all over, almost bent double, holding a stick to save himself from falling. He was speaking very feebly, begging people to give him food. The prince saw the old man. He did not know what he was looking at, as this was the first time he had seen anybody like him. "What is that, Chana?" he asked his driver. "That really cannot be a man. Why is he all bent? What is he trembling for? Why is his hair silver gray, not black like mine? What is wrong with his eyes? Where are his teeth? Is this how some men are born? Tell me, O good Chana, what does this mean?" Chana told the prince that it was an old man, but he was not born like that. When young, he was like us, and now due to his old age, he has become like this. He told the prince to forget this man. But the prince was not satisfied. "Everyone in the world, if he lives long enough, becomes like this man. It cannot be stopped," said Chana. The prince ordered him to drive back home at once, as he was very sad, and wanted to think carefully about that terrible thing called old age. As a prince and others must one day grow old, weak and sad, and none could stop old age, although one is rich, great, and powerful. That night there was a grand royal treat for the prince. He was not interested or happy at all during the dinner and dance. He was thinking all the time, "Some day you will all grow old, every one of you, even the prettiest." He could not sleep. He was in bed thinking that one day everyone would grow old, gray, wrinkled, toothless, and ugly, like that old beggar. He wanted to know if anyone found a way to stop this horrible thing, old age. The king, when he heard this story, was very sad and worried, and was thinking whether this would make his son leave the palace. So he told his attendants to put on more dances and dinners. But the prince begged his father to allow him to see Kapilavastu on an ordinary day without the people being told of his visit. A sick man. The king unwillingly allowed the prince to visit the city. He thought it would not do any good trying to stop him, since it would only make him unhappy. On this occasion, the prince went with Chana dressed up as a young man from noble families, because he did not want the people to know them. This time the city was quite different. No more joyous crowds of people hailed the prince, no flags, bunting, flowers, and well-dressed people, but simple people doing their daily work to earn a living. A blacksmith was sweating and pounding to make knives. The jewelers and goldsmiths were making necklaces, bangles, earrings, and rings out of diamonds, gold, and silver. The cloth dyers were dyeing clothes of lovely color and hanging them up to dry. The bakers were busily baking bread, cakes, and sweets and selling them to the customers who ate them still hot. The prince looked at these simple common people. Everyone was very busy, happy, and pleased in his work. He also saw a man on the ground, twisting his body, holding his stomach with both hands and crying out in pain at the top of his voice. All over his face and body were purple patches, his eyes were rolling, and he was gasping for breath. Once again, for the second time in his life, something made him very sad. At once the prince, being a very kind person, ran forward and carried the man, and resting his head on his knee, patted the man and said, "What is wrong with you? What is wrong?" The sick man could not speak but only cry. "Chana, tell me why this man is like this?" questioned the prince. "What is the matter with his breath? Why does he not talk?" "Oh, my prince," said Chana, "do not hold this man like that. This man is sick. His blood is poisoned. He has plague fever, and it is burning all over the body, and that is why he is crying loudly without being able to speak." "But are there any other men like this?" asked the prince. Yes, you may be the next if you hold a man so close as that. Please put him down and do not touch him, or the plague will come out of him and go to you. You will become the same as he is. Are there any other bad things besides this plague, Chana? Yes, my prince. There are hundreds of other sicknesses as painful as this, replied Chana. Can no one help it? Will everyone be sick? Can it happen at any time by surprise? Asked the prince. Yes, my dear prince, said Chana. Everybody in this world. No one can stop it, and it can happen any time. One may fall ill and suffer much. The prince was sadder this time, and he returned to the palace and began to think. A dead boy. On his return to the palace, he was still very dissatisfied and was now thinking more often. The king, seeing him so changed, became very sad. But once again the prince asked for his permission to go out of the palace to see more life in the city. The king agreed, as if it was of no use trying to stop his son. This time, too, wearing the clothes of noblemen, the prince and Chana went out from the palace, walking in many parts of Kapilavastu. Then he saw a few people coming along the street, crying, while 4 men at the back were carrying a plank on which a very thin man lay flat and still. He was like a stone, never saying a word. Then the people went a little farther, rested the person down on a pile of wood, and set the wood on fire. The man did not move, as the flames were burning the wood from all sides. What is this, Chana? Why does that man lie there and so still, allowing these people to burn him up? He does not know anything. He is dead, replied Chana. Dead? Chana, is this called death? And everyone has to be dead like that man? Yes, all living things must die some day. No one can stop death from coming, replied Chana. The prince was shocked and surprised, and he could not say anything. He thought it was a terrible thing that such a thing called death should come to everybody, even kings and sons of kings. Was there no way to stop it? He went down home in silence and began to think in his own room the whole day. He was very sorry and sad and said, everybody in the world must some day die. No one has found out how to stop it. Oh, there must be a way to stop it. I must find it and help the whole world. A monk. When he visited the city for the 4th time, in a garden the prince saw a happy man wearing an orange-colored robe. Then he asked Chana, who is this man wearing an orange-colored dress? His hair is all shaved off. Why does he look so happy? How does he live, and what does he do for a living? That is a monk, said Chana. He lives in a temple, goes from house to house for his food, and goes from place to place telling people how to be happy and how to be good. The prince was very happy now. He thought, I must become one like that. And then he walked through the garden very happily. He walked until he was tired. Then he sat down under a tree to rest. As he was sitting under a cool, shady tree, news came that his wife had given birth to a fine baby boy. As soon as he heard the news, he said, Rahula has been born to me. An obstacle has been born to me. And his son's name became Rahula. As he was returning to the palace from the garden, he passed the room of one of the princesses called Kisagotami. She was looking out the window and saw the prince coming. She was so taken in by the young handsome prince that she said loudly, Oh, how happy and how cool must be the mother and father and the wife of such a handsome young prince. As he passed this woman, he heard this and thought to himself that everybody would be happier if they knew what real and selfish happiness were. Leaving home, the king arranged a grand dinner and dance for the prince to celebrate the birth of his grandson. He invited the best dancers and singers in the country for this. He did this because he saw that the prince was unhappy, although he had just had a son, and the king knew that the prince was going to leave the palace for good. So for the last time, at least, he must do his best to stop this from happening. During the dinner, the most delicious food was served. The most enchanting and beautiful dancing girls in the country danced for him. The prince attended the party just to please his father. In fact, he was tired and was thinking of how he would stop old age, sickness, unhappiness, and death. He was so tired of thinking that he soon fell asleep. When the singers and dancers saw that they were dancing and singing to a sleeping prince, they too stopped and rested for a while until the prince woke up again. Like the prince, they, too, were very tired and soon fell asleep. Some time later that night, the prince got up and was so shocked and unhappy to see these people. What a sight! All the prettiest, most charming dancing girls and singers in the country, who an hour ago were trying to make the prince so happy, were now all over the floor of the room, on chairs, settees, and beds in the most ugly, shameful, and loathsome positions. Some girls were snoring like pigs, with their mouths wide open, some grinding and chewing their teeth like hungry devils. So ugly and dirty they looked now that this made the prince even more disgusted and very unhappy. He got up quietly from the room, as he did not want to wake up any of the dancing girls, and called his faithful servant Chana to saddle his favorite white horse, Kanthaka, to go out on a long journey. As Chana was getting ready his horse, he went quietly to see his newborn son for the first time in his life. His wife with the baby beside her, and her hand covered the baby's face. He could not see the baby's face even. He knew that if he moved his wife's hand to see his baby's face, he might wake her up, and she definitely would not allow him to leave the palace. He said to himself, "If I try by moving her hand to see my son's face, I fear I may wake her. No, I must go without seeing my son's face this time. But when I have found what I am going forth to seek, I shall come back and see him and his mother again." Then quietly he went out of the palace at midnight on his white horse Kathaka, with Chana, his faithful servant, holding on to its tail. He came to the city's gate, and nobody stopped him, and he rode away from all who knew, respected, and loved him so much. He took a last look at Kapilavastu, sleeping so quietly in the moonlight. He was going away to find out a way to stop old age, sickness, and death. He rode to the bank of the river Anoma. He got down, removed all his jewelry and princely clothes, and gave them to Chana, asking him to return them to the king. Then he took his sword and cut his long hair. He put on orange-colored clothes, took a begging bowl, and asked Chana to go back. "It is no use living in the palace," said Chana very sadly. "Without you, my master, I want to follow you." "Don't do that, Chana," said the prince. "Take these clothes and jewelry to my father and tell him, my mother and wife, not to worry. I am going away to find out a way to stop old age, sickness, and death. As soon as I have found it, I will return to the palace to teach it to my father, mother, wife, son, and everybody in the world. Then all of them can be very happy." Chana started to go, but the horse refused to go. The prince talked to the horse very kindly, patted it, and said, "Please, Kanthaka, go with my friend. Don't wait for me." Both of them went a little distance, and then the horse stopped and turned around to have a last look at the prince. Chana understood the horse's feelings and said, "Friend, our master is going away to bring us something very good. Don't be sad. He will come soon. Let us go." The horse looked very sad. Tears rolled down from its eyes. It kept its eyes fixed at the prince for a few moments. Later, the horse died of sorrow. Alara and Uddaka. When Prince Siddhartha left his palace and a life of luxury, 5 of his friends who heard this left their homes to become monks like him. One of them was Kondana, the young wise man. In fact, he was the cleverest of the lot. The other wise men were Badiya, Wapa, Mahanama, and Asaji. They too were wearing orange-colored robes and went from place to place begging for food. At that time in India, there were many religious teachers. The best and well-known one was Alara. Ascetic Gautama went with his 5 friends to study under him. He stayed and learned all that Alara could teach him very faithfully and obediently. He was the most hard-working pupil, and his master liked him very much, as he was very clever, too. Finally, he could not teach him any more, and he said, "You are the same as I am now. There is no difference between us. Stay here and take my place, and teach my pupils with me." Ascetic Gautama was surprised and asked, "You cannot teach me more? Can you teach me the way to stop death, sickness, and old age?" "No," said Alara, "I cannot, for I do not know that myself. So how can I teach you that? There is none in the world who knows this." Ascetic Gautama left him with his band of 5 friends. They wandered all over the country, practicing what they had learned. At last they heard of another great teacher who was famous for his cleverness. He was called Uddaka. They went and learned from him for some time. Here, too, Ascetic Gautama learned very obediently and became his best pupil. Uddaka, too, could not teach him how to stop suffering, old age, and death, and he, too, had never heard of anyone who could solve these problems. Once again, Ascetic Gautama was very disappointed and left Uddaka with his 5 friends and made up his mind to struggle by himself very hard until he found the cause of all the sufferings of life. Torturing the body. After leaving Uddaka, Ascetic Gautama and his 5 friends wandered from place to place as before. He practiced fasting, which was thought to be one of the best ways to acquire wisdom. He, too, at the beginning took little food. Later on, he only ate 1 meal a day for months. Then he took food once in 2 or 3 days. He was eating roots of plants, leaves, and juice of various leaves and fruits. Because of the lack of proper food, his body became so thin that his legs became like bamboo sticks. His backbone was like a rope. His rib bones in the chest were like an uncompleted roof of a house. His eyes sank right inside, like a stone in a deep well. His skin was so dry and wrinkled that hairs were missing. In fact, he looked like a living skeleton, all bones without any flesh. He suffered terrible pain and hunger, and he thought that the only way to happiness was to be most unhappy now. He continued to meditate, but still he did not know anything new. Another way of torturing his body and mind was holding his breath for a long time until he felt terrible pains in the ears, head, and the whole body. Then he began to be alone or practice loneliness. During the full moon and new moon nights, he went out to the forest, cemetery, and other lonely places to meditate. He became frightened at first in these places, especially when wild animals came. But he never ran away from these places. He stayed behind bravely in these dreadful places, meditating all the time. He used to wear rags or torn, dirty clothes from graveyards and rubbish heaps during this period. In the hot summer, he stayed indoors at night, and in the burning sun in the daytime. In the cold winter, at midnight, he used to dip himself in the icy cold water and stay for a long time. This was to torture his body and mind even more and suffer even more than ever. For 6 long years, he did all these practices, and in spite of the great pain and suffering, he did not find out anything. He finally thought that this was not the way to find out wisdom. One day he fainted in a place called Uruvela. Then a goat boy came and gave him some milk, and that made him better. Soon he began to take more milk and food and built up his body. When the 5 friends saw that he was not fasting any more, they felt disappointed and left him alone. Sujata gives milk rice. In a village called Senani, there lived a young, very beautiful and rich girl who wanted to marry and have a son. She waited for many years and she was not successful. The people told her that she must go to a banyan tree near Narrator river and ask the tree god to give her a husband and a lovely son. People at that time believed and prayed to trees and images for help. She did as told by the people. Later on she got married to a young man and they had a lovely son. She was extremely happy and decided to fulfill her vow to that tree god for giving her all that she had asked for. So on the day she wanted to fulfill the vow, she sent her servant to clean the foot of the banyan tree. This young and beautiful lady's name was Sujata. She had 1,000 cows, and she fed them sweet creepers called valmi, so that the cow's milk was sweet. Then she milked 1,000 cows and fed that milk to 500 cows, and their milk to 250 cows, and so on until she fed only 8 cows. She did this to get the sweetest and most nourishing milk to make the delicious milk rice for the tree god. She then cooked the rice in this milk. Suddenly, she was surprised to see her servant running and coming to her very happy and excited, and said, "Oh, my lady Sujata, the banyan tree god himself has come down from the tree for your food. He is seated under the tree meditating. How lucky you must be to have the god in person to accept your food." Sujata too was very happy and excited. She danced with joy with the servant. They then took even more pains to prepare the milk rice. Taking with them the delicious milk rice, both of them went towards the banyan tree. Sujata was so surprised and excited to see her tree god himself, who was so handsome looking, so serene, sitting and meditating. She did not know that he was, in fact, ascetic Gautama. While she was putting the delicious milk rice in his bowl, she said, "May you be successful in obtaining your wishes, as I have been." Ascetic Gautama ate the food, and then, with the empty bowl in his hand, crossed the river Neranjara on the way to Gaya. Enlightenment. In the evening after Sujata's lovely meal, he went to Gaya and looked for a suitable place to sit down and meditate. He sat under a tree called the Bodhi tree, with his face to the east, and made an earnest wish with a very strong determination. "Though my skin, my nerves, and my bones shall waste away and my lifeblood go dry, I will not leave this seat until I have attained the highest wisdom called supreme enlightenment that leads to everlasting happiness." So he practiced the concentration, deep thinking of breathing in and breathing out on this Vesak full moon eve. During this period of concentration, many evil thoughts began to come to his mind. Desire for worldly things, dislike for a holy, pure, and good life, hunger and thirst, feeling of great thirst and hunger, craving, the intense desire or liking, longing for all things, laziness and idleness, fear of things like devils, evil spirits, doubt, stupidity, stubbornness, wish to have everything for oneself, wish to be praised and honored, and to do things for fame, thinking very highly about oneself and looking down upon others. These thoughts began to disturb his concentration, but he was more firm than ever. He became more calm and brave and continued his concentration. At last, he destroyed all these thoughts during the earlier part of the night and got the power of seeing his own past lives. In the second part of the night, he got the power of seeing the death of living beings and their rebirth. And in the third part of the night, he got the power of understanding the cause of all evil and how to get rid of them. Thus, he became the wisest person in the world. All the answers to the questions lodged in his mind for so many years were then found. He knew how to end sorrow, unhappiness, suffering, old age, and death. He also found out the real peace, happiness, and freedom. He knew everything more than man could ever know, and he became perfect. Meeting the 5 friends. Now the Buddha wanted to tell other people how to become wise, good, and do service to others. On the 50th day, the Buddha thought, "Now Asita, Alara, and Uddaka are dead. I cannot tell them what I know. But my friends, Kondana, Badiya, Wapa, Mahanama, and Asaji are in Benares. I must go there and preach to them." Then he set out to walk to Benares about 100 miles to tell them what he had found, and wandering day after day from place to place, at last one evening he came near the grove where those 5 ascetics were staying. This grove was called the Deer Park. They saw him coming towards them, and one said to another, "Look yonder, there's that ascetic Gautama coming here, a luxury-loving fellow who gave up fasting and fell back into a life of ease and comfort. Don't let us speak to him. Don't let us show him any respect. Let nobody go and offer to take his bowl or his extra robe from him. We'll just leave a mat there for him to sit on if he wants to, and if he doesn't want, he can stand. Who is going to attend on a good-for-nothing ascetic like him?" However, as the Buddha came nearer and nearer, they began to notice that somehow he was not the same as he used to be in the days when they had lived with him and studied under him. Now there was something about him, something noble and majestic, such as they had never seen before. And almost in spite of themselves, before they well knew what they were doing, they had forgotten all they had just agreed on as to how they were going to receive him, and one was hastening forward to meet him and respectfully taking his bowl and robe from him, another busily preparing a seat for him, while the third hurried off and brought him water to wash his feet. After he had taken the seat, the Buddha spoke to them and said, "Listen, ascetics, I have found the way to deathlessness. Let me tell you. Let me teach you, and if you listen and learn and practice as I tell you, very soon you will know for yourselves, not in some future life, but here and now, in this present lifetime, that what I say is true. You will realize for yourselves the state that is beyond all living and death." Naturally, the 5 ascetics were very much astonished to hear their old master and teacher talking like this. They had seen him giving up his hard life of fasting. They had seen him stop from all efforts to find the truth, and here he was actually coming to them and telling them that he had found the truth. They simply did not believe him, and they told him so. "Why, friend Gautama," said they, "when we were living with you, you practiced all sorts of stern bodily mortifications such as were practiced by no other ascetic we ever heard of in the whole of India, and that was why we took you for our master and teacher. Yet with all you did, you never found out the truth you wanted to find. How is it possible you can have found it now when you're living a life of luxury, having ceased from striving and have turned to live in ease and comfort?" But the Buddha replied, "You are mistaken, ascetics. I have not given up all efforts. I am not living a life of self-indulgence and idle comfort and ease. Listen to me. I really have attained supreme knowledge and insight, and I can teach it to you so that you also may attain it and possess it for yourselves." When the 5 monks were willing to listen to him, he delivered his first sermon to these 5 ascetics. Here, in this sermon, the Buddha advised his followers to avoid 2 extremes, such as self-indulgence and self-torture, and to practice his teachings. He also advised them to understand the 4 noble truths and to practice the noble path, or to lead a Buddhist way of life. Returning home. When King Suddhodana came to know that the Buddha was preaching in Rajagaha, he sent 9 messengers, one after another, inviting him to come to Kapilavastu. All the messengers became monks. The Buddha's teachings were so appealing to them that they wished to listen to more of his teachings, and they forgot to convey the king's message. When the Buddha did not come, the king sent Kaludai, who was a playmate of the Buddha, to invite the Buddha. Then only the Buddha received the message and agreed to go to the palace. When the people of Kapilavastu came to know that the Buddha had come to their city, all of them flocked to the city to see the Buddha, and Prince Siddhartha's own relatives said, "He is our younger brother, our nephew, our grandson." They asked their younger ones, "You go forward and respect him. We will sit behind you." The next day, he took his begging bowl and went from door to door asking for food. The king was very annoyed when he saw his son begging in the street. He ran to him and said, "Why do you disgrace me, my son? Why do you ruin me like this? Why don't you take food in the palace? Is it proper for you to beg food in this very city where you used to travel in golden sedan chairs? Why do you put me to shame, my dear son?" "I'm not putting you to shame, O great king. This is our custom," said the Buddha calmly. "How can it be? Nobody in our family had ever to beg like this. How can you say it is our custom?" "Oh, great king, that is not the custom of your royal family, but it is the custom of the Buddhas. All the former Buddhas have lived by receiving their food like this." However, when the king begged him to take food in the palace, the Buddha went into the palace to take food. Princess Sayodhara. When the Buddha had taken his meal, all who knew him as Prince Siddhartha except Yasodhara came to talk and respect him. All of them were still surprised, but were very happy to see their beloved prince now in an orange-colored robe, respected by everybody, loved and worshipped by everybody. But Yasodhara was in her room thinking, "Prince Siddhartha is now an enlightened one, a Buddha. He now belongs to the line of Buddhas. Is it right for me to go to him? He does not and cannot need me. Is it right for me to go to him? I think it is better to wait and see. If he comes here, I will pay him the respect he deserves." After a while, the Buddha asked, "Where is Yasodhara?" "She is in her room," said his father. "Come, let us go there," said the Buddha, and giving his bowl to the king, went to her room. As he entered the room, the Buddha said, "Let her pay me respect as she likes. Say nothing." When Yasodhara knew that the Buddha was coming to her room, she ordered her servants' girls to wear yellow robes and to welcome him. And as the Buddha entered her room and before he took his seat, she came quickly to him and holding his ankles, placed her head on his feet and cried until his feet were wet with her tears. The Buddha kept quiet, and nobody stopped her until she was very tired of crying. Then she cleaned the Buddha's feet and sat down respectfully. When she had sat down, her father-in-law, King Suddhodana, said, "Lord, when my daughter-in-law heard that you were wearing yellow robes, she also robed herself in yellow. When she heard that you were taking one meal a day, she also did the same. When she heard that you had given up lofty couches, she lay on a low couch. When she heard that you had given up garlands and scents, she also gave them up. When her relatives sent messages to say that they would maintain her, she would not even look at anyone. So virtuous was my daughter-in-law. Not only in this last birth, O king, but in a previous birth too, she protected me and was devoted and faithful to me," said the Buddha, and told them the story of the Karakinara Jataka, one of the previous birth stories. Prince Rahula. On the day the prince left the palace, Rahula was born, and now he was 7 years old. He was brought up by his mother and grandfather. On the 7th day after his homecoming, Princess Yasodhara gaily dressed up young Rahula. Then she pointed to the Buddha, who was then having his meal, said to Rahula, "Darling, can you tell me who is that?" "He is the Buddha, mother," said Rahula. The mother's eyes were filled with tears, and she said, "Darling, that golden-colored ascetic looking like Brahma, surrounded by 20,000 ascetics, was your father, and he had great property. Since he left home, we do not know what has happened to it. Go up to him and ask for your presence and say, 'Father, I am the prince. When I become the king, I will be a king of kings. I want property, for the son is the owner of what belongs to the father.'" Innocent Rahula came to the Buddha, held one of his fingers, looked up at his face, and telling him all that his mother had asked him to say, said, "Father, even your shadow is pleasing to me." After the meal, the Buddha left the palace, and Rahula followed him, saying, "Give me my inheritance. I am going to be the king. I want wealth. You have plenty of them. Please, Father, give me my inheritance." Nobody tried to stop him, nor even the Buddha stopped him following him. Coming to the park, the Buddha thought, "He desires his father's wealth, but this goes with the world and is full of trouble. I shall instead give him the sevenfold noble wealth which I received at the foot of the Bodhi tree, and make him an owner of an excellent inheritance." When they came to the temple, the Buddha asked one of his pupils, Sariputta, to make Rahula a monk. King Suddhodana was deeply grieved to hear of his beloved grandson becoming a monk. He went to the Buddha and very respectfully told him not to ordain, making a monk, anyone without the permission of the parents. He said, "When you left home, it made me very sad and painful. When Ananda left home, my heart began to ache and I was very sad and unhappy. Then I began to concentrate my love on Rahula, my grandson, and loved him more than anyone else. Now you have brought him here and ordained him. I am very sorry and most unhappy about this. Please don't ordain anybody hereafter without the permission of his parents." The Buddha agreed and never ordained anybody after that without the parents' permission. The last days of the Buddha. Many incidents in the life of the Buddha occurring after his 55th year were recorded without an exact indication of the year in which they happened. However, the incidents occurring in his 80th year were placed in that year because they were recorded in the Maha Sutta. When the Buddha reached his 80th year, he felt that his days in this world were coming to an end. Although he had suffered the sicknesses and effects of old age like any other man, he was different from an extraordinary man. With his mental powers developed through advanced mental training, he was able to overcome certain painful feelings of the body. His mind was always sparkling like a radiant diamond, even though his body was beginning to weaken. In this last year of his life, he decided to spend his last days in the peaceful and simple surroundings of Kusinara, a small village in the northern India. He preferred to leave behind him the large and prosperous cities such as Rajagaha and Savatthi and their crowds, their merchants and kings. The starting point of his journey was Rajagaha, the capital of Magadha. He journeyed on foot, accompanied by Venerable Ananda and many disciples, going through many cities and villages. By this time, Venerable Rahula and Yasodhara had already passed away, and so had the Buddha's two chief disciples, Moggallana and Sariputta. During the travels, the Buddha's thoughts turned to the welfare of the order of monks. Many of his sermons were concerned with advising on how the monks should behave to ensure that the order would carry on after his death. He reminded his disciples to practice all the truths that he had taught them. One sermon reminded disciples to practice the 37 factors of enlightenment. Another sermon was on the 4 ways to check whether a teaching was the teaching of the Buddha or not by comparing them with the Vinaya, the disciplinary rules for the order, and the suttas, the sermons of the Buddha. There was one sermon which the Buddha gave again and again during the many stops in his last journey. It was a sermon on the fruits of the following, the 3 divisions of the Noble Eightfold Path, morality, concentration, and wisdom, which would help his disciples to put an end to all sufferings. The Buddha's final words of advice. The Buddha spoke to Ananda. It may be, Ananda, that some of you will say, without the Buddha, the sublime teacher, there is no teacher for us. No, Ananda, you should not think in this way. Whatever doctrine and discipline taught and made known by me will be your teacher when I am gone. Then the Buddha, addressing the other monks, said, If any amongst you has any doubt as to the Buddha, the teaching or the order of monks, ask me now so that afterwards you may have cause to regret that you did not ask me while I am still with you. But none of the monks said anything. None had any questions, and all of them were silent. Then the Buddha said, Perhaps it may be out of respect for the teacher that you do not question me. Let a friend, O disciples, tell it to another friend. Still the disciples remained silent. Then Ananda spoke to the Buddha. It is wonderful. It is marvelous, Lord. I do believe that in all this great company of monks, there is not a single one who has doubts or questions about the Buddha, the teaching, or the order of monks, or the path and the method of training and conduct. Then the Buddha addressed all the monks once more, and these were the very last words he spoke. Behold, O monks, this is my last advice to you. All component things in this world are changeable. They are not lasting. Work hard to gain your own salvation. He passed into Nibbana, leaving nothing whatever behind that can cause rebirth again in this or any other world. The passing away of the Buddha occurred in 543 BC on Vesak full moon day. The Four Noble Truths. The heart of the Buddha's teachings are the Four Noble Truths which he explained during his very first sermon at the deer park in Sarna. 1. The truth of suffering. Physical sufferings of birth, old age, sickness and death. Mental sufferings of separation from our loved ones and contact with undesirable persons. 2. The truth of the cause of suffering. Craving is a cause of suffering. Craving is not only desire for and attachment to pleasure, wealth, and power, but also ideas, views, and opinions. 3. The truth of the end of suffering. Suffering can be eliminated by eliminating the cause of suffering, which is craving. 4. The truth of the path that leads to the end of suffering. The way leading to the end of suffering is known as the middle path because it avoids two extremes: the search for happiness through the pleasures of the senses, and the search for happiness through self-mortification or inflicting pain on oneself. The middle path. The middle path is generally known as the Noble Eightfold Path because it consists of 8 parts. 1. Right understanding. Right understanding is seeing things as they are, which means understanding the Four Noble Truths. 2. Right thought. Clear thinking that leads to positive states of mind. 3. Right speech. Refraining from telling lies, using harsh words, and engaging in useless gossip. 4. Right action. Refraining from destroying life, stealing, and engaging in dishonest dealings. 5. Right livelihood. Refraining from following an occupation that harms others, like trading in weapons, alcohol, and poisons. 6. Right effort. Avoiding negative thoughts and emotions and getting rid of them if they have already arisen. 7. Right mindfulness. Having a clear sense of one's mental state and bodily health. 8. Right concentration. Practicing meditation leading to a state of pure calmness and awareness. Pancha Shil, 5 precepts. Lay Buddhists should develop good conduct by training in the 5 precepts. I undertake to observe the rule 1. To refrain from destroying living creatures, no killing. 2. To refrain from taking what is not given, no stealing. 3. To refrain from overindulgence in sensual pleasure, no sexual misconduct. 4. To refrain from incorrect speech, no lying. 5. To refrain from intoxicating drinks and drugs which lead to carelessness, no intoxicants.